you and that you will come and worship with us again. I also invite you to participate in any of the programs that the chapel sponsors. There are many announcements in your bulletin. There are a couple of little additions, and I'll call your special attention to several items. First of all, don't forget that next Sunday in here, following the worship service, we have our annual meeting. At that time, we'll be electing new members and officers of the church board. We'll be passing a budget for 2017 and any other orders of business that come before the group at that time. It's very important. It's not usually a long meeting, but it's very important that you be here so that we have a quorum and we can transact the church's business. If you want to see little bios of the people who are going to be on the board, they are on the bulletin board, and you've also got some information in your bulletins. There are membership forms there also. I mentioned last week that many people have been coming to the chapel for years as friends, and we don't push hard on official membership kinds of things because anybody who wants to work in the church program is invited to do so. There are only two things that non-members can't do, and that is they can't serve on the board and they can't vote. So if you have thought about membership and you wish to be a member even before next Sunday, please fill out that form, get it back to Sherry in the office, and that pretty much takes care of it. We can get together then at some point if you wish to talk or ask questions. Now, concerning the Beach Walk, which is coming up next Saturday, it's here already. A couple of items in addition to what's in your bulletin. We do ask that everybody, walkers as well as volunteers, do bring some non-perishable food for the RCS Food Bank. There will be a bin over at the Palm Pavilion at the start of the walk as well as here at the end of the walk. So we ask you to seriously consider that. Also, if there's any of you wish to volunteer to help stuff the goodie bags, that's going to be done this coming Friday here at the church beginning at 10:30 in the morning. Now for section leaders. This is just for section leaders. If you would go to Chapel Hall after church by the water fountain, and you can separate your T-shirts for your different section people. So if you'll do that today after church, that would be very helpful. And we can still use some more auction items for our silent auction, and you can see Fred Bickle, Rick Owens, or Shari Maxwell if you wish to do that. I think the rest of it you all know how to read, so I'll let you take care of that. Now I'll introduce Fred Bickle, who in turn will introduce our special guest.
You know, in the past 6 years or 7, Rick Owens would be up here with me. But Rick has had a recent knee replacement, and so I'm here instead. Rick and I and about 50 volunteers work on the Beach Walk in various capacities. The annual Beach Walk is next Saturday, as Herb said, the 28th. And we raise money through donations from business and individuals, from walker registrations, from items donated from the silent auction, and sometimes just outright donations through envelopes that we put in the bulletin. The money is given to Religious Community Services, which we refer to as RCS very often. And we allow them, as they see fit, to use the money for the food bank or the Haven, the Spouse Abuse Center. Our church family is very compassionate, very generous, and always welcomes the opportunity to participate in programs that assist people that need our help. RCS does a great deal to relieve hunger and suffering. At this point, I would like to introduce the new president and CEO of RCS, Mr. Kirk Ray Smith, Sr. Mr. Smith.
No, please, no. But real quick now, I was told I had 30 minutes, but out of respect for everybody's time, I'm only going to use about a few minutes. Is that okay, Pastor Herb? Well, Pastor, I appreciate you. Fred, I don't know where Rick is. I had a chance to meet Rick earlier. Thank you, sir. Jan, and then your beautiful wife, Lorraine, I call her the First Lady. She was okay with that. But real quick, something that obviously you don't know is that your founder, Nora Atkins, was Canadian. And so is my beautiful wife, Vanessa, right there, who's Canadian as well. So, Vanessa, why don't you just wave your hand real quick? There you go. She's so shy. But real quick, so there's not much I can tell you about RCS. You guys have supported RCS for many, many years. I think probably since 1998 it's been close to $500,000 of support that's come from this ministry, and we really, really appreciate that. And unfortunately, places like RCS has to exist. I wish we didn't have to be here. When you look at domestic violence, when you start talking about homelessness and hunger, I wish those things could be eradicated and just go away. But unfortunately, the need continues to grow, and thank you for stepping up year after year, supporting us, and I really do appreciate that. And so I was kind of told to say a little bit about myself, more about myself than about RCS, so real fast. So I have been, I shouldn't be here. Every day I say I don't deserve this job, and I can tell you that my past, growing up the way that I did, single parent, so you could probably fill in most of the lines and be 90% correct without knowing much at all about me, but a very, very difficult childhood, a very, very difficult upbringing. So I had a household full of domestic violence and abuse, poverty, hunger, you name it. By the grace of God, I'm here. And so what I was able to do throughout my lifetime when I committed myself to Christ very early, in 1993, 92, I think it was the second year, because we celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary about a month. Please don't congratulate us, please. Please, you don't have to do that. And we were able to successfully raise 3 boys, 2 are in the military, 1's in college. I have a daughter-in-law and a grandson. And once again, I know I don't look it, so I appreciate that because I know what you're thinking. And once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your compliments. But by the grace of God, I am where I am. I was a pastor for a church for 7 years. I always worked a full-time job in addition to ministry for a long time. And I've been a CEO for many years and just been committed to nonprofit work. So it's just a privilege to be here. I'm honored and blessed. And thank you so much for supporting us. And I look forward to meeting you all next week. And hopefully I did a good enough job where you invite me back, Pastor. All right, so did I meet my 3-minute cutoff? Because I don't want that blowhorn. I heard it was a blow. I don't want that. But God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Kirk is a preacher, so he was taking a real...
So he's all ready. He's got lessons to learn, okay? We gave you one thing I need you to do this morning. What's what? All right.
We're going to hear from Chris now.
It's all right. He's a little nervous in his new role. It's okay. You got your wife watching you. I understand. It's all good. So good morning, everybody. Come on, good morning. Good morning. Thank you. So most of you know who I am. In case we have any guests, my name's Chris Brown. I have the pleasure of being the president of the board right now. And some of you are used to seeing Dwight in his chair right in the very back row every day. Just want to let everybody know he's okay. His van has some mechanical issues. But I spoke to him yesterday, and he called me again this morning, and he asked me to share a fun fact with everybody. Did you know our pastor, let's see, this year you've been here 36 years, is that right?
36 years.
So 36 years, unprecedented, I think. Fun fact, did you know that to date, my understanding is you have never preached a sermon on your birthday, is that true? Wow. Until today. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Now, you'll notice in your bulletin, I've been nominated to serve as your president again next year. That may not happen now, I'm sure, because he does not want this by any means, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you again and happy birthday. All right, many more to come, all right? Thank you very much. Let's begin our service. Thank you.
We have a sneaky congregation. That total surprise. First of all, with Kirk, when you let a preacher get up, you always take a chance that he's going to stick to the time. That's the first thing. Vanessa, I did not know she was a Canadian. You will find that there were a few other Canadians in the room this morning, just a few. And thank you. When you hit 55, it's nice to be able to celebrate your birthday. And so thank you for honoring me in that way. Let's now begin our service of worship.
Please join me in the invitation to celebration responsively. This morning, as every Sunday morning, we join with others all over the world who are also at worship.
So in this sense, we pray and praise with one voice, God of all.
We raise our voices, our hands, our hearts, while seeking communality of all purpose.
We raise our voices, our hands, our hearts, in mutual concern with the needs of others.
Let us now pledge to do more than just speak our desire.
Now we pledge ourselves to working for a better world.
call upon God, reading the invocation in unison. O God, you who are the head of a universal family, draw us together with our brothers and sisters around the globe as we strive to find unity. Make us realize that we are all related to one another, regardless of differences in skin color, ethnic background, worship practices, and the places in which we live. Show us that our hopes and dreams are pretty much the same, and that we can accomplish more together than we can alone. Open our hearts and minds to the needs of all around us, and make peace our primary purpose and goal. All this and so much more we pray, ending with the words of Jesus. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Is now and ever shall
In gratitude for the many gifts we have received and in commitment to the work of this church, let us be generous in our morning offering.
If we are truly committed to our discipleship, O God, we look at our world and we worry. There is so much beauty, so much wonder, so much awesomeness, and yet we so often back away from preserving this as we hurt and harm in our own self-interests. We see the life that is all around us, but we consider it less valuable than our wants and desires. We are so concerned with our own well-being, our own comfort, that we care little or nothing about the well-being and comfort of those who are different than we are and or live in other places. We are so tied to the interests of our own nation that we ignore and oppose the interests of other countries. We even hate and kill in your name, convinced that we are right and that only we understand who you are and what you want. Take away our arrogance and make us humble. Take away our greed and make us generous. Take away our self-centeredness and make us compassionate. Take away our intolerance and make us loving. Enable us to lift our eyes beyond the moment and see what tomorrow might bring. Lift us, turn us, change us, enlighten us, inspire us, grow us. Give us the tools we need to improve and the desire to do so. This morning we pray for our nation as it has changed leadership and embarks on new journeys and new directions. Give our leaders wisdom and compassion as they work for all the people of this nation and the world. Unite us as one people while supporting us in our efforts to do what is right, and enable us to use our freedom productively as we seek what is good and oppose what is wrong. So we pray together and individually as we come to you in silence and meditation. Amen.
Oh, my God, when I
I want to read to you this morning from the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. All of these passages I know are familiar to you. I'm reading from the first chapter, verses 26 through 31. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Let us think about these words as we continue together in our worship this morning. It always amazes me. I've said before, Marilyn and I do not consult with each other before services. I pick the hymn. She doesn't know what I'm picking. She picks the choir pieces. I don't know what she's picking. Yet so often, it all just seems to come together. I want to share with you this morning some incredible, fantastic, unbelievable numbers. Some of my inspiration comes from the adult class, which is being held on alternate Monday nights on the subject In Search of God. Through videos and discussion, we have been dealing with the immensity of space and the intricacies of life, everything from suns and planets to what comprises DNA. We have talked about the Big Bang Theory, about intelligent design, about what factors must all coincide and correlate to make life as we know it possible. The scientific findings we have considered are awesome, or at least they lead to that which is awesome. I said that some of my inspiration comes from this class, but I have been thinking about this morning's sermon topic for quite some time. And let me be very honest with you up front. I am scared to death regarding what we are doing to our world. Frankly, if we don't change course, I believe we will destroy it because of hatred and or ignorance and or selfishness, or perhaps a combination of all three. There is something very wrong when the people we pick to lead us don't accept the findings of science or choose to ignore them for whatever reasons. And it is, in my opinion, the height of arrogance to even suggest that we, as the top of the line in the life department, have the right to do whatever we want to do with our world because, after all, it is our world. We human beings are pretty puffed up with pride, aren't we? Not only do we have little regard for other life forms when they compete with us, but we also have little regard for other human beings when they compete with us. And in our conviction that God loves us best, we think we have a blank check to do whatever we wish to anyone or anything that gets in our way. Do you realize how minuscule we are in the overall scheme of things? There are at least 100 to 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe. The observable universe. And that number could climb to maybe 2 trillion if we go beyond what we consider observable. Now our galaxy, just our galaxy, which is one of perhaps 2 trillion, has over 100 billion planets. Can you wrap your mind around numbers like that? And if our beliefs are correct, that this is all the result of intelligent design, the designer being the one that we call God, wow. And yet we still tend to have this feeling that everything revolves around us, so taking good care of us should be our first and major priority, regardless of the results. 100 billion planets in our own galaxy, 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe, 2 trillion galaxies in the extended universe, as near as we can figure. And God designed it all, or so we believe. Then here we are, hating and hurting, squabbling and fighting, grasping and grabbing, convinced that we have the right to anything and everything we want, and that our nation, our religion, our interests, whatever are our nations and our religions and our interests, are at the very top of God's list of favorites. But will we go so far as to destroy it all in our quest for control? Sometimes it sure seems that way. I used the numbers I gave earlier to show just how small and insignificant we are, especially in comparison to the one who made this all. But right now, this all is all that we have, and yet we seem intent on its destruction and disappearance. We don't seem to get it. We don't seem to realize how interconnected and interrelated all aspects of life on our planet are. When Lorraine and I visited Selby Gardens in Sarasota a few years ago, I was impressed by a sign which I saw there. It offered the following: 2 monarch butterflies finished their epic migration from Washington, D.C. by fluttering onto a fir tree in Mexico. Sea stars graze on kelp forests in the Gulf of Alaska. A Florida panther rests in a thicket of saw palmetto, waiting to hunt in the cover of night. These actions and interactions between plants and animals are threads in our planet's web of life. This intricate web supports life by providing food, clean air, shelter, and water. We can't break too many threads before the web collapses. We are just one of perhaps 40 million species, but we are making decisions that affect all life on Earth. And yet, didn't a congressman recently suggest that the Earth was not worth saving if we couldn't use it and enjoy it as we wished? So let's get rid of the EPA because the regulations it enforces interfere with our business and industrial desires. I don't know about you, but I kind of like clean air, clean water, clean earth, and the presence of animal and plant life in my world. In 1971, Theodore Geisel, better known as Dr. Seuss, wrote a children's book entitled The Lorax. In it, the Lorax, a champion of the environment, goes up against the personification of industry known as the Onceler. The Onceler discovers a special tree, and after cutting it down, starts a business which grows and grows. Ultimately, the trees are all gone. So are the other creatures which the tree supported. The land is polluted, and after the destruction of the last tree, the business must shut down, so there is nothing left. The Lorax warned from the beginning that this would happen, stating his mission as, "I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues." More and more I worry that in our give me everything I want world, there is nobody to speak for the trees or for any other of Earth's life forms, or indeed for the planet itself. When considering the immensity of the universe, we cannot help but realize how insignificant the sphere on which we live is. And yet it is also unique because it is the only planet we have so far discovered that supports life. And this Earth of ours, the only home we have. You would think we would do more to protect it. Carl Sagan, 20th century American astronomer, cosmologist, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author, teacher, wrote a book entitled Pale Blue Dot, a vision of the human future in space. In it, he included a photo of the Earth taken from space. And in explaining the deeper meaning of the photo, he wrote, "From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. Or if everyone you love, on it everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mere speck mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturing, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity and all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another, and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. So, in a sense, each of us is a speck on a speck on a speck on this pale blue dot we call Earth. And this pale blue dot is itself nothing more than a speck on a speck on a speck in this unimaginably vast universe. And yet, to the best of our knowledge, common and small as we all are, this pale blue dot is the only planet that supports life as we know it. So we are also unique. We are, Earth is. When one considers the complexity needed to produce and sustain life, as the Monday night class has, strong evidence supports the notion of intelligent design being behind it all. In other words, God. And that is what the Bible in narrative and poetic form tells us. So then, perhaps we are ordinary and special at the same time. James Weldon Johnson, 19th to 20th century African-American poet and preacher, wrote a classic work in retelling the creation story from Genesis. I want to close with that this morning. And God stepped out on space. And he looked around and said, I'm lonely. I'll make me a world. And far as the eye could see, as the eye of God could see, darkness covered everything, blacker than 100 midnights down in a swiper swamp. Then God smiled, and the light broke, and the darkness rolled up on one side, and the light stood shining on the other. And God said, that's good. Then God reached out and took the light in his hands, and God rolled the light around in his hands until he made the sun. And he set that sun ablazing in the heavens. And the light that was left from making the sun, God gathered it up in a shining ball and flung it against the darkness, spangling the night with the moon and stars. Then down between the darkness and the light, he hurled the world, and God said, that's good. Then God himself stepped down, and the sun was on his right hand, and the moon was on his left. The stars were clustered about his head, and the earth was under his feet. And God walked, and where he trod, his footsteps followed the valleys out and bulged the mountains up. Then he stopped and looked and saw that the earth was hot and barren. So God stepped over to the edge of the world, and he spat out the 7 seas. He batted his eyes, and the lightnings flashed. He clapped his hands, and the thunders rolled. And the waters above the earth came down. The cooling waters came down. Then the grass sprouted, and the little red flowers blossomed. The palm tree pointed his finger to the sky, and the oak spread out his arms. The lakes cuddled down in the hollows of the ground, and the rivers ran down to the sea. And God smiled again, and the rainbow appeared and curled itself around his shoulder. Then God raised his arm and waved his hand over the sea and over the land, and he said, bring forth, bring forth. And quicker than God to drop his hand, fishes and fowls and beasts and birds swam the rivers and the seas, roamed the forests and the woods, and split the air with their wings. And God said, that's good. Then God walked around, and God looked around on all that he had made. He looked at his sun, and he looked at his moon, and he looked at his little stars. He looked on his world with all its living things, and God said, I'm lonely still. Then God sat down on the side of a hill where he could think. By a deep, wide river he sat down with his head in his hands. God thought and thought till he thought, I'll make me a man. Up from the bed of the river, God scooped the clay, and by the bank of the river he kneeled him down, and there the great God Almighty, who lit the sun and fixed it in the sky, who flung the stars to the most far corner of the night, who rounded the earth in the middle of his hand, this great God, like a mammy bending over her baby, kneeled down in the dust, toiling over a lump of clay till he shaped it in his own image. Then into it he blew the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Amen. Amen. If we are the creation of the God who created the entire universe, then small and insignificant as we are also unique and special. And yet we seem intent on destroying it and ourselves. Is that what caretakers do? Is that what stewards do? Is that what God, according to the Bible and our proclaimed beliefs, calls us to do? Who do we think we are? as we go from this place, let us commit ourselves to do what we can to save our world. And as we do that, may the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, both now and forevermore. Amen.